Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dina Meredith, VPA's Communications Manager. And we're so glad that you could join us for the second in our three-part webinar series on Google Tools for Journalists. Last week, we learned about advanced search, Google Trends, and touched on Pinpoint. And this week, we'll continue with Pinpoint, then get into some various visualization and mapping tools. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A or chat section on your screen, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. Now I'd like to introduce our presenter, Mary Nahorniak, who is Google News Lab's U.S. Teaching Fellow. She is familiar with the Virginia news industry, having formerly worked as an editor at the Richmond Times-Dispatch and the Virginia Pilot. Mary was previously part of USA Today's leadership team as the Director of Audience and was responsible for the organization's digital platforms and around-the-clock team of nearly 30 editors. She was one of the first journalists pioneering how newsrooms can directly connect audience through social platforms, beginning at the Baltimore Sun in the mid-2000s. Thanks for being here with us today, Mary.
Sure, I'm happy to be here. Hi, everyone. Hi again for those who are rejoining the series after last week, and hi to the new folks as well. I'm glad to be with you here today. We'll also have a third session again in 2 weeks, and I'll share what that'll be about in just a moment. For the time being, I'm going to share my screen, and let's dive in a little bit. So let me get everything all situated. As Deanna mentioned, please do not hesitate to ask any questions in the chat. I'm going to make sure I have that up, and I've got it here on another screen. And we weren't able to dive as deep into Pinpoint as we wanted to last week in the interest of time. So I want to start with that one today, and I'll begin again at the beginning for those of you that were here, a little bit of a reintroduction, and then for those who are new. So Pinpoint is Google's newest tool. It was built specifically with journalists in mind, with feedback from journalists along the way, and that continues to be the case. So if you use it and you have things you wish it would do or feedback on how it works, the team loves to hear that kind of thing. You can filter it through me. I'm happy to reach out to them on your behalf. I know in some cases, like if anybody hits like a file size limit, which is actually pretty hard to do, you get a really generous amount of storage. They are happy to do like one-off cases where they give you more. So lots of ways to work with that team. So Pinpoint was built with reporters specifically in mind, although I'm discovering more and more ways to use it if that's not your main role. There are other ways of sort of diving in there. It's free to use. It's free for journalists. It's free for academic researchers. And those are the only two types of people that are really gaining access to this tool. It's not a public-facing tool. And it's really, really powerful. So I'll be curious to hear again if you do use it and how you do. It's part of our Google Journalist Studio set of tools. So you'll see some familiar tools here. Google Trends we talked about last week. We talked about Fact Check Explorer. You may know some of these other tools as well. Flourish is where we'll spend a good bit of time today. And what Pinpoint allows you to do is to upload lots of documents, thousands of documents potentially, and search through them and help you sort of analyze what you have. So it can be a really powerful way of pulling together big sets of information. And I say documents, and when I say that, I often think of PDF files and Word docs, but it can host all different kinds of file types, including audio. So one way that people often find themselves getting into the tool is to use it for audio transcription. So that could be, you can break out the audio from like a Zoom meeting if you're covering city council, or an interview that you do, whether you record it in Zoom or something else. If you have that MP3 file or whatever other audio file type, you can upload it into Pinpoint and you're gonna get that transcript back in a pretty good amount of time, usually like a 1-to-1 ratio. If you have an hour of audio, it'll take about an hour to process, sometimes a little bit faster. And it's very good. It's not perfect, but it's very, very good. So I'll show you a little bit what that looks like when we get into the tool itself. And these are the file types that are supported. So again, I mentioned PDFs and Word docs, and then audio, you'll see you can add images and you can actually search for text on an image. So I'll show you also what that looks like, which I've never found another tool that can do that. You can do that for memes. You can do that for all kinds of like photos that have images on them. Slideshows are uploadable. If you cover the military, they love to do PowerPoints. So you can upload any files you get into here as well. And this is a little bit of what this looks like. These are called entities. And essentially when you go into Pinpoint, and I'll show you the tool in just a moment, when you look at your collection of files, it's going to give you the most mentioned people. So this is a really quick way to get a sense of what do I have here, right? If you put out a FOIA request for all the emails between the mayor and a certain city council person, something like that, and you get those back, you can upload them into Pinpoint and you'll very quickly see who is most referenced. So you would of course expect to see the mayor, that other person, and then whoever they're talking about, right? Could be journalists that they're emailing with, could be other people on the council, whatever that might look like, all the way down to any single person that's mentioned will be broken out. You'll also get organizations and locations. So it's helping you just get your arms around what do I have here? And you can also share a collection of documents with colleagues. You can share it with reporters that you're working on something with. You can share it with your editor so they can see what you're doing. And the thing that's important to think about with sharing is it's sort of like a view only access, right? Same as like in a Google Doc. The people that you share it with cannot edit your collection at the moment. They may have that functionality down the road. So what that means is they can't upload new documents, but it also means they can't delete what you have, which can be a good thing. If you've got a painstakingly created set of work, you don't want anybody messing with that. And these people don't have to have their own Pinpoint access to access it, although they're certainly welcome to. So let's hop over to the tool. So Pinpoint is at g.co/Pinpoint, and I'm actually just remembering that I'm putting in the chat for everybody here your cheat sheet. So it's all the tools we talked about last week and everything we'll talk about today, including a link to gain access to Pinpoint. So as mentioned, the team loves feedback. They're very, very responsive to journalist feedback, and they have an internal goal of getting back to request to use the tool within 24 hours. So there are times where I'll do a demo like this. I'll mention it to you at the beginning of the hour, and by the end, you've got access. So it's something that you can start using right away. So I'll show you a little bit about what it looks like inside Pinpoint. So the first thing you would see without ever having uploaded anything are these public-facing collections. And it's important to remember that nothing you upload to Pinpoint can be shared publicly. So this isn't a place to like upload a PDF that you then want to embed in your story. You would need to use another tool like a Scribd or a document cloud for that. So these are done through special partnership through another process. So it's really important to keep in mind, we get privacy questions and they're really important. So I want to be clear on that whatever you upload into Pinpoint is yours and yours alone, unless you choose to share it with somebody, as mentioned before, share it with a colleague, that type of thing. So they're not being searched by any search engines, they're not being crawled, and they're not going to show up publicly. So these are those public collections. They're all documents that any of us could gain any other way, right? The Afghanistan papers, all the court filings from the Mueller investigation, just giving you a sense of the type of things, both that you can certainly look through these for story ideas and just get a sense of what's there, and the kinds of things that could be great to upload. So I think one way that I've heard folks say they're using it. So again, you get all your FOIA documents back, you upload them, you get a sense of what you have, but also that mayor city council thing, right? If you're reporting on something regularly and you just want to always drop in the minutes of a meeting or the agendas, you could even do this for like internal work. Just keeping track and keeping a collection of something you're not sure exactly what you're going to want it for yet, but there it is all together and it's all searchable. And so up here in my collections area, this is how you would start a new collection. So you click on create a new private collection. It calls that out specifically. I would give it a name. So we'll just do one for right now. And then I can just start adding my documents. I can pull them over from Drive if I've already got them there, or I can upload them from my computer. You can see here, this is where you would upload your audio file. So you just go ahead, choose where your documents are and begin your collection. What I want to do is actually show you from a collection that already exists, some of what I was just describing. So if I go into these NASA documents, this is a set of documents from the Apollo missions, and there are 1,300 of them. They all show up as PDFs, although not all of them were uploaded as PDFs. So you can see we've got JPEG files, we've got audio files in here. They get converted to PDFs within Pinpoint, but there were all a bunch of different types of things. We can see who's most mentioned in this collection. And if I click on show more, any person, here's Barack Obama, that's mentioned in the collection will show up here all the way down to people who are only even mentioned one time. So what you would do is if you go, oh, this is what I'm looking for, this is going to show me, here's where this person shows up in this collection. So let's close that one out. And then we see the top mentioned organizations, NASA, of course, not surprising, DOD, Air Force, and then the most mentioned locations, the United States, Houston, and Earth. I think Moon would probably be somewhere in there. And then so there are, Steve has a question. Hi, Steve. Can Gmail threads be added to a collection? So you would have to export that thread as a certain file type. You could export it probably as I know you can do it as a PDF. I haven't exported it as like an email file type, but I'm certain that that's possible. But I know there are at least several workarounds that you could solve for right away. So yes, the short answer is yes. You're welcome. So I want to show you some of that searching. So if I search for the word moon, which we would expect to find a good bit of here in this Apollo document collection, there are 350 instances of the word moon showing up. And then we also have what we call synonym search. So I think of this as Pinpoint. It's pulling out the word lunar here, essentially trying to be helpful. If you're looking for everything about the moon, you might also want to see this. And you might go, yes, I do actually. I'm trying to track all the references, right? And if you don't want that, you could then remove it from your search. No, I really am only looking for just the word moon. So you could minus out lunar, which was something that we talked about last week as well. So that one can be really helpful. You can also search handwriting. So I'm running a search here that's going to bring me to this file, which is it was a JPEG, so a photo of a document. We can see this sort of typewriter font. We recognize that it's pulling out the word Loomis, former acting director of NASA. And then it's also found the word state, which is handwritten in cursive diagonally. And yet Pinpoint is able to read that. And again, just sort of going, if you're looking for this, you probably want to see this. You're probably going to want to see that as well. So you could think about this for like bills that are marked up in the margins, archival material, like if you cover the music industry, thinking about like something I talked about with somebody last year is when John Prine died, like if they've got archival material of like songwriting and handwritten notes from him to his wife, like all kinds of interesting things that if you can get them into Pinpoint, then you could begin to collate and search through them and start to make really quick sense of something. So I think that one is really interesting. I don't believe I got a chance to show this next one last week. And so this is the text on photo, which I mentioned. So what this is, I'm searching for STDN, which is the Spacecraft Tracking and Data Acquisition Network within NASA. And so what it's doing is it's pulled up this photo and it has found STDN on this person's console. I know that's a little bit hard to see, but I hope you get the gist. And so essentially, again, Pinpoint saying, hey, if you're looking for information about this particular network within NASA, you probably want to see this photo because here is somebody who's got this on his desk. Whether he works for that piece, I don't know, but that's a question that we could begin to ask and start to try to figure out. Another way that I've used this, I mentioned memes a couple minutes ago. So the University of Alaska has a program where their students will go in and combat mis and disinformation in comment threads like on Facebook. And so they're tracking those viral memes that start to show up around like COVID vaccines, right? So as they're downloading those memes and they've got text on either inside the photo, in the photo itself, as you see here, or text written on top of the photo, like in meme style, you can then search through all those and begin looking for patterns and finding patterns. So that can be really, really powerful. And then I'll show you the what this audio file looks like. So in this case, this was uploaded as an MP3. It's a transcript of a call. And when we open it up, so when it is transcribed, it shows up for you as a PDF. And what we get is this section of audio that is like giving us the time delineation. It's found those words, congratulate and Bobco, which is a name that I searched for. And I can see that this is pretty good. Again, it's not perfect. If I highlight it, I'm getting prompted to copy it. And so if you're thinking, how do I use this? This is where this is a quote I want in my story, I copy it, I bring it over to my story, whether it's in my CMS or a Google Doc, whatever you're using to write. And then I'm getting prompted to even re-listen to the audio. So this is shortcutting me to the point in the audio where I can very quickly listen to the person say it clean it up, make sure it's correct, double check this quote as it was transcribed, and then very quickly move on. So it's really doing some of that heavy lifting for you that is not the best use of your time, right? Transcribing audio, kind of a drag, really a time suck. So it's letting you just get, I think of it as like helping you get 85 or 90% of the way there with a transcription file like this that you can then use, make it perfect, make sure that it's what you're looking for, but saving the time for your own work so that you can do the things that you do best, right? Whether that's beautiful writing, video production, an interview, sourcing, whatever that might be. So that's kind of how I like to think about using that one. And let me just go back one more. So I'm going to go back to all my collections here, and I'll just share the one thing that I've been working on. In the Bay Area where I live, there's a public housing complex called Golden Gate Village, and there's a lot of interesting things happening with it in the news. And then I moved here a little under a year ago from the East Coast, and so I've just been trying to get up to speed on my community. And so I'm starting to just collect all of the things I'm finding and reading about it, including things like meeting minutes from the housing authority, from our board of supervisors. I'm working on getting some audio out of YouTube files and getting them in here. So just trying to pull together all of these different pieces of this story that I think is a really big one for where I live, so that it's all here if I want to start searching for this person here. Lewis Jordan is the former executive director of our housing authority. So a person in the news, a public figure, and somebody that I want to know every time he's mentioned. How's he connected? What's the public feeling around this person? So that's an example of just trying to sort of bring to life, like working on something in a repertorial sense and bringing it all together in a collection that then becomes usable when you're ready to do your stories. So I hope that makes sense. Let me quickly go back here. Again, if you have questions, let me know if there's something else you would like me to show you. I'm just going to show a couple of quick case studies, and then we'll move into our meat of today's training. So these are just some examples of how Pinpoint has been used. We've had a lot of big organizations use it for, frankly, a number of years. It used to be called Backlight, if that rings a bell to anyone. And in this case, Reveal for the Center for Investigative Reporting used Pinpoint to search through thousands of pages of emails and of records from health agencies from around the country to report this story. So it was part of an ongoing series around COVID in immigration detention centers. And in this case, it was a story about testing. So you can quickly see how if you've got your documents, in this case, thousands of documents, you're looking for any time tests or testing are referenced, because you're just starting to see how does it show up and how are they using it. So you're honing in on what that specific angle is. And here the Boston Globe used it. They got back the documents regarding the police department in this case, photocopied really badly. Some were like upside down and sideways. And yet they were still able to quickly search through them and even write a story on deadline, even when they got hundreds of documents back from their FOIA requests. So instead of having to sit there, get to all your printouts, read through them, you may still choose to do that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking for, I want to write this story on equipment, you could have that story narrowed in on very, very quickly. The Post has been using it for a number of years. They've used it on some really big projects. They use it on the Mueller report. I'll also call attention to this story here on the right, which is Johnson & Johnson creating this super poppy in Tasmania for opioid pills. So Pinpoint helped the reporter organize thousands of court exhibit documents to find what was needed to tell that story. And this will be the last one I share. This is from a former newsroom of mine, the Baltimore Sun. So in this case, with Martin Luther King Day coming up, the reporter went into a public collection, that's the FBI files on Dr. King, and he just searched for the word Baltimore, and he was able to find some interesting references and then find this historical story and publish it connected to MLK Day in mid-January. So just a way of getting at historical documents and finding something that could just be a sort of an overlooked story and that's interesting for folks to read. So I really like that one. Okay, we're 20 minutes in, so I'm going to pause there on Pinpoint. Again, happy to take questions either now, later. Feel free to reach out to me. I hope you will use it. I think it's really powerful and interesting. And I'd be so curious to hear how you're liking it if you do. And with that said, let's switch for today. over to visualization. Let me just fly through some of this early stuff. I'll call this URL out again. It's in your cheat sheet, but it's our training site, and it's where you can do some of this training at your own pace. So just quickly walking through things step by step. They are very short. They tend to be about 5 to 10 minutes a piece, different training modules. It's free to use, it's easy to access, and you can share it with colleagues as well. So we have two types of visualizations we want to talk about today. The first are pure like data visualizations. I'm going to show you two tools on those, and then we're going to switch to some of our geo tools, so things like My Maps, Google Earth, etc. And I assume we have a variety of folks on the call with different backgrounds on these things. If this is not something that you typically do, or you don't have a lot of comfort around this, fear not, you're not alone. I'm going to show you a couple of really simple things that you can get started with. And if you are a visualization journalist, a graphic journalist, I also hope there will be something new for you here, or new ways to use them. So that said, let's dive in for visualization. So the very first one I want to show you is our simplest to use. It's called Data GIF Maker. It makes super, super simple GIFs in just a variety of ways. Its functionality is limited so that it can be simple. So let me just go to it to make that make a little bit more sense. So I wouldn't call it powerful, I would call it helpful. If you've got a lot of great data and you want to build something complicated and interesting, this is not the tool for that, but this is something to do, like a quick survey results, just show a little bit of information. So let me pull over a couple of real world examples. The first one I'll show you is this racetrack GIF. So this is from last summer's Olympics, and these are the new Summer Olympic sports and their popularity. So climbing had the least interest publicly, and then the more popular ones were skateboarding and then surfing. So just taking little pieces of data and visualizing it. I'll show you one more, which is one that we actually looked at last week. Let me just bring that over. And this is how these different Yoda characters are searched for. So when people are searching for Yoda, are they searching for baby Yoda, or are they searching for old Yoda? And we can see here that they're more often, this was for 2021, searching for baby Yoda. So what you do here is you would choose which shape you're looking for. There's only 3 shapes. This one I call lollipops. You could do things in percentage values. You could do it in raw data values. So let's do that. So we're just going to click on it. And we're going to say, just hypothetically, that Coke is better than Pepsi at a ratio of 9:1. So 9 people out of 10 prefer Coke. And if you prefer Pepsi, I know you're steaming right now, and I apologize. Here are some things you can't do. You can't change these colors. You can't put a lot of words in here, and you're limited to 4 items. But here we've got 2. We've got a really simple survey. We can just click enter. We can give this a title. And we can click on preview. And so here's our GIF. Again, really simple and yet visually engaging. So really nice. You could put it in a story if it's useful, but I really like it to think about like in a tweet, right? It's going to catch your eye as information is flowing down. And it's going to just play over and over, as we saw sort of on these other ones. So they're just going to keep animating themselves. So again, I think that visually they're really interesting. And then when you've got it the way you want it, you can save it down. HQ and LQ just mean high quality and low quality, so big and small file sizes. And it's as simple as that. So let's see if they've actually added. Okay, so here are then our different types of curves. Here's another one. If you want a certain set of colors, what I would do is just keep refreshing until you get something that you like, but it's just going to give you some default colors each time, and they're always going to be a little bit different. So again, you have your racetrack, the data moves like this. You have your expanding lollipops, and then you have your sliding rectangles. So if you've just got a simple survey, or even you're putting out a survey, this is a great way to show those results. So that's on one side of the spectrum of the visualization tools, keeping it really simple, and yet I think still has some value to offer. And then on the other end of the spectrum is Flourish. So Flourish is not a Google tool, but it's one that we help make available for journalists. So it's free to use for journalists. You can go to flourish.studio/newsrooms and sign up for an account. I will note that it was acquired by Canva, and that news broke yesterday, which is really cool. If you're a Canva user, you know how really easy drag and drop it is to use. So I expect they're going to just all become part of kind of the same interface. And in a blog post, they announced if you have one account or another type of account, how they're coming together. But that said, I don't think anything changes in terms of your access and in terms of what it can do. So just sharing that link. And then I want to show some examples of Flourish visualizations, and then we'll go to the tool and take a little bit of a tour around. If you were here last week and you remember when we did trends at the beginning, I showed a few sort of animated horse race charts. This one might look familiar. And then there was one of movies popularity over the years. So a lot of ways of making data really visual, really accessible, and really engaging for your audience. So I'll show a couple of others and I'll show you them live in the tool. One, again, if this is not really your thing, you don't do data viz, that's totally cool. There are some that are really simple to use, including this one, which is a photo slider. And that just shows like a before and after. So this is a before and after of the Fukushima nuclear power disaster. You can show all kinds of things in a before and after. It's a great way of visualizing election changes. This is a parliament chart. So let me bring a couple live examples over. So this is from Sky News, and all of the charts in the topper of this story were made using Flourish. So the actual like scrolly telling, that's done on their end, but each of these charts, including this dot chart, are done in Flourish. And this is a story about vaccines. It was actually done in late 2019. So it's pre-COVID vaccine, which sort of dominates our vaccine conversation globally at this point. But as we know, there are still lots of really important ones that people need to continue getting. And so this is a story just about that. 2.6 million people across the world died because they didn't have access to or didn't get a certain vaccines that they would need. So all of these charts were done using Flourish. So it could be really, really useful to tell that story and to bring people in. Again, a really nice topper on that one. And I'll also share this story, which is about sleep disorders. I'm going to go ahead and translate it to English. And all of the graphics in this story, they won't translate to English because they're embedded from Flourish. But these are different types of sleep disorders. We can see insomnia. And then I want to show this, which I think is really great. Also, if you're not talking about like a data visualization, you just want to make something representative visually. These are cards. Again, I'll show you where this is. So right now, I want to kind of show you what's possible and what others have done with the tool. And these are just celebrities that have sleep disorders. So it's a little bit about what that disorder is and how it shows up in their life. So a couple of interesting ones. And then I also showed you a picture of, but I'll show you in real life. Whoops, that's not the link I'm looking for. Oh yes, it is. I'll just log in. Let me grab this one again. Okay, that's not showing for me. So it was meant to be a link of a mural that was painted on a building. So it's 2 street view screenshots of what the building looked like before, and then what it looked like after it had the mural. And you could just slider back and forth to show that before and after. And I see a lot of ways that we do that in stories. Oftentimes we'll just embed a photo and say, this is what it looked like before. And then we'll say, this is what it looked like after. And instead, this is a way that lets your audience get involved with that slider action. So let me stop showing examples and actually show you Flourish itself. And I hope it's going to let me log in today. I'm sorry, I am being prompted to put a new password in. So if you just bear with me while I do that. Okay. Here we go. Sorry for that disruption. So I'm inside my Flourish Studio homepage. So these are things that I've worked on, and we can look at some of those. But what I really want to do is show you some of what's possible. So if I click on New Story, I'm going to choose a visualization. So, oh, sorry, these are showing me my other ones. Here we go, new visualization. So these are examples of all of the types of visualizations that are possible using Flourish. So we have a huge set of line bar and pie charts, which we're familiar with. Again, if you've got a simple set of data, you can make a pie chart really, really quickly. You can do projection mapping, which is more complex to do, but can be very interesting. Lots of scatter plot charts. The cards is one of the ones I just showed you, so I'll go here quickly. So this is what we saw on that sleep disorder story. And this is a way of building out just cards and sets of information. So a couple of things I want to show you is anytime you click into a visualization, you're always going to have some dummy data, which I actually love, because if you look at a blank screen like me and you panic, you don't have to. Here you can see I can go in and I can start to edit this. I can start all over from zero, but it's just showing me here's what's possible. Here's a little bit of something that we've made for you. So you'll always have that, and you'll always find that data in the data tab. So we have preview, we have data. When I click on data, it takes me to what is effectively a spreadsheet. And then from here is where I understand how I can build that thing. So I've got like a title column, a column for my image files. And there are a lot of different ways to bring data into any visualization. You can manually type it in. You can upload a spreadsheet. So you can upload it from your computer. You can upload it. You can bring it in from Google Docs. There are a bunch of ways to bring data in. So if you've got it organized, this is the place to do it. And then here is where you start to say, like, so what this visualization is saying is there needs to be a title column, and you could change it if you've got your titles in column Z, you make it Z. And this is where you start to make sense of that. And then the other thing that you can do, every visualization has, is over here on the right, making those visual customizations. So for example, this is in like a really bright color palette. But if I wanted to choose something different, I could do that. You can use custom colors. You can, if you do end up creating a newsroom account, or if somebody on your team already has one, you can share like color palettes with each other. You can bring your own logo in, which is really important. A lot of times free access to a tool means you don't get to do that type of thing. You could definitely do that here. This is showing Google Trends because I'm within my organization, but you can make this your own so that doesn't have to stay. And so this is where you begin to make it visually look the way that you want. In the case of this one, then the final thing that you would do once you've built it out the way you like is you export and publish it. And from there, you will get embed code. So I'm going to click on it. This is not already published. I can download the image. Here's the new Canva plugin, add to Canva presentation. So again, if you're a Canva user, that will make some sense. And this is where I would get embed code. So that's where I would pick up that embed code and paste it into the CMS, into my CMS within the HTML editor. So I know I'm sharing a lot and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I just want to make sure that if you have questions, please type them into the chat for something you'd like to see. I'll keep sort of giving a tour around here and show you some of my favorite visualizations. We looked at these are horse race charts. And so they animate data. This is where we talked about in Google Trends, how you could download trends data. This is where you can begin building one of those. These are Game of Thrones characters, popularity by week. And you start to just see that information change over time. This can be really great for election season, for pop culture stuff. You know, I've showed you a lot of examples of pop culture things. And it's just sharing how these types of things change in public opinion, all using trends data. And you can make changes here. So you can do like, you could do it where you see the whole thing all at once. You can do a big reveal toward the end. You can speed it up. You can change the colors. There are all kinds of ways to do this. Within this one, I'll also show you again, here's the data. And this is what that type of data looks like as it makes those time points. And then here's where you would grab that embed code. Going back to my possibilities, I want to show you the slider in action. So on this one, we just go from pixelated photo to beautifully rendered image. So I can just bring my slider over and over again. The mural is an example. I think now that I'm logged in, that actually will work. Let me try that for a third time's a charm. It is working. So we can see what the building looked like before and what it looked like after this was built. So just thinking about really local changes in your town, this is what something like if a tree fell in a storm or there's some flooding, this is how you can really show what it looked like before, what it looked like after. There are a lot of different ways to use that one. And this is a super simple one to work on. You just upload your 2 photos here. They do need to be the same size. And then there aren't a ton of customization settings, but there are enough if that's important to you, like header and footer. And the slider, you can change sort of like what this thing looks like. So I really like that one for showing change. And let me show you a couple of others. We also have, this is a newer one. This is a countdown. So this was a countdown that was built last summer ahead of the Summer Olympics. I don't know what this is counting down to now, but what you do is you would put in what's the date of something. So right now this is set for July 23rd, 2025. But you could do this, ahead of an election, ahead of the Olympics that are coming right now. Once you put that future date in, you're going to get this countdown. It's something that you could even put like on a homepage. You don't have to have a logo. You can make this go away. You don't have to have an image. You can make that go away. And you can even change how this looks. Flourish is based in Europe. So a lot of times they do their dates differently than we do. And this type of counter maybe doesn't look quite right to American eyes, but you can make that look a different way. So I like that one again for simplicity as well. And then finally, we have, there's actually like a quiz. So if quizzes are something you want to do, whether that's like a weekly news quiz or anything else, you can do that through here and build that quiz. So lots to play with here, lots of possibilities on that spectrum between data GIF maker, really simple, limited in what you could do, but keeping it simple and making it really easy to use, to Flourish. It also, I don't want to say that it's complicated. I think it's complex and it can do a lot and it can be very powerful. The other thing that I've got in your cheat sheet are a bunch of resources. So the Flourish team does bi-weekly, what they call tea breaks. So just training sessions every 2 weeks on something, some specific aspect, some specific visualization, or maybe something new. They've got great FAQs on every visualization. They've got videos on how to do them all. And they're very responsive. So know that there are lots of resources for you if this is a tool that you want to play with and bring into your stories. Okay, questions on visualization? All right, so for our last 20 minutes, we're going to talk about Geo and Mapping. And I hope that you have used some of these tools in one way or another, whether that's for work or in your personal life. And then I want to show you some ways that you can use them for storytelling specifically. So let's start with kind of the basics. So Google Maps, we've all probably used it one time or another, knowing that when we type something in, we often get a set of data about it, just some information, which can also, we can quickly jump from there into Street View. And there's a lot of interesting things to do with Street View. I mentioned in this mural example that if you had Street View images from a time in the past to now, that you can use those screenshots to build that slider. I'm going to close some of these tabs. And just to also share that the Street View images are always being updated. You've probably even seen one of the cars driving around at some point. But we also get a photo for Street View from snowmobiles, from UGC, from people standing on the beach. So there are a lot of different ways that goes into the program. But there are also, I've read a number of really interesting stories just on some of the Easter eggs that people find in the hidden gems at Street View. My Maps is the first tool I want to dive into a little bit deeper, and that is because there are a bunch of different things that you can do to show points on a map. And it's something that if you haven't built one for work, you may have accessed one, certainly looked at somebody else's. And a lot of times people use these for just like, if you're planning a family vacation, starting to sort of map out the things that you might want to do that week, or maybe restaurants you want to visit in your town or new restaurants this year. So a lot of different ways to work on that. So I'm going to head over to my maps and click into it. And here I see all the maps that I've created. And so one thing that is really cool is that when you see a map that you like, a lot of times you can click to it and bring it into your maps dashboard. So I'm going to see if this one works, which is one that I did that for. Okay, let me actually show you the screenshot of it. So in New York, at the beginning of COVID, people, you might remember this, and you maybe had a similar effort where you are, we're putting rainbows in their windows as just a like, we're all in this together kind of moment. And interesting to reflect on that about 2 years later, just how different things feel now. But if we remember that time, just what that was like in the neighborhood where I used to live, people would put like letters in their windows so that kids could like go on an alphabet hunt, and they put stuffed animals in their windows and all kinds of things. But if you did this, if you put a picture of a rainbow in your window, you could add on this collaborative map, add your address to this big map. So when I first saw this map, I thought that was pretty cool. It's called the Rainbow Connection Map. And so I've got it in my own maps as well. So know that there is a UGC collaboration element with these, right? So you, of course, as the expert on a topic, can say these are the best restaurants in Richmond this year and make a map of those things. Or you can say, where have you spotted this type of thing in your city? Or is there something that we should be exploring? You know, drop a pin on this map. And it can be a way of collecting data and making a collaborative project. I'll also just share a couple of other examples. So this is a map from the UK, which shows different pollution hotspots and different types of pollution. So each of these things is a layer. So this is really interactive. And this is one from the Washingtonian, which was all of the places to eat and drink on the water. They published this last spring, which I thought was just a nice way of like, within COVID, we were wanting to be outside, safer to be outside. And so here are some places that you can eat and drink as the weather warms up. So just some nice ways of using mapping. Let me go back into maps. So what I want to do is I'm going to start a new map for us. And there are a bunch of ways to bring in data points, not unlike Flourish. You can bring in spreadsheets, you can type in data, you can build maps, however you like. So let's just start with, let's see here. I'm just going to do a spot in Baltimore, where I used to live, which is the USS Constellation in the Inner Harbor. Maybe some of you have visited it. So if I've searched for that point, it's come up here. And what I can then do from here is I can add this point to my map by clicking add to my map. I can then edit what shows up. So if I click on edit, I can remove this little Google blurb if I don't want it. I can add some text that gives some information about it. I can add a photo or a video. This is pretty cool. So you can upload photos or videos that you might have, and you can also bring them in from YouTube. So if I find, I've got this virtual ship tour of the USS Constellation. If I bring this over and save this, so if I begin to create this map of interesting points of interest in Baltimore, then when people hover over this place marker, this is what they're going to get. They're able to watch this video right in line. They got some rich information right here. I can also change the type of marker. This is really hard to see, I know, and I apologize, but just know that you can change it from that little place marker that we're used to seeing to a whole bunch of different icons, including like your little hiking person with the stick. You've got a bicyclist, you've got the fork and knife that show restaurant. So a lot of possibilities. You can change the color. So you can really make this look the way that you want it to. And then if I give this a name, I can add a description, and I can then I can use this for marking points of interest, and I can also tell a story, right? I can say, these are the points of interest in Baltimore's Inner Harbor that date back, from the 1800s or something like that. So doesn't have to just be simple points of interest. I can really share something interesting. So that's one way to start to add to your map. I'm going to actually go ahead and remove this point. And what I want to do is bring in data from a spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on import. I'm going to go to my Google Drive. I'm going to go find it. And so what I did in this case is I've got a file of the 10 tallest mountains in North America. So it's pulling this in, it's saying which column is the location. So how do we know where to put the points? So I've got a column in my spreadsheet entitled location. I know that I have them in lat long format. So I'm going to click continue. And then here it's saying, what is the column that is the name? So in my case, that's the column titled Mountain Peak. I'm going to click finish. I'm going to let this thing build, and hopefully it works. And it looks like it has. Giving it a new name because it's not Baltimore. And so here we can see those place markers. And so we're really getting somewhere. We can see Denali is the tallest, Mount Logan up in Alaska. But this is a start, right? But this isn't exactly something that I want to put in a story yet. One change I might want to make is changing my type of map to showing satellite, where you can actually start to see the geography of the land. And then again, I can go into each place marker and I could start to make them rich. I can bring in those photos and videos. I can change what's said about them. If I'm telling a story about maybe the history of these mountains or the indigenous land that they're on, that's where I would start to put in that information. And then the thing that I want to really show you from here is how you can then turn this into a really rich Google Earth project. Before I do that, because we're going to switch programs, I want to show you how you can embed this. So because I'm logged into my Google account, I'm not able to actually share this publicly, but this is where you would do it. You click on share, you make it accessible publicly, and then you can grab your embed code from there. So if you had this the way you like it in Google Maps, that's where you're going to get that embed code by clicking share, grab that code, bring it into your CMS, into your HTML editor. Okay, so from here, what I really want to show you is if you build this thing in Google Maps, in My Maps, you can then carry it over to Google Earth. And that's where it starts to get really rich and really interesting. So here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on the dots and I'm going to export this whole map, and I'm going to export it. I'm actually this is a mistake that I made for a little while until I solved for this one. So I just want to call it out. I'm not exporting the entire map. I'm just exporting really the data layer. So I'm clicking on this, the North American Peaks is what the name of my file was called. And I'm going to download it. You can see I'm getting a KMZ download. And I'll pause too if I'm losing you. I know, again, this is not for everybody, but I want to share that every step I'm taking here is in the resources in your cheat sheet. So there's a YouTube video that shows you exactly how to do all of this so that you can then carry it over. But I just want to show you what's possible. So I've got my KMZ file. I now want to go to Google Earth. And I think we're all relatively familiar with Earth. We've seen a lot of those animations. If you watch the show Alone, which I spent like the whole first year of the pandemic watching all of the shows, they do a lot of that like flyover animation zooming that we're used to seeing. So from here, I'm going to go into my stories, my projects, and I'm going to make a new project. So I'm going to be importing a Kml file from my computer. I'm going to go find the one I just downloaded. Let me get rid of that. And so what we can see here is we've got our 10 points, the same as they were on the map, but we've now got them in Google Earth. So the first one, it's zooming us over to Denali. again, I didn't add in that rich information here, but you could. This is where you would do it on here. You can give it a title, you can add your photo, etc. So you can continue building it out here. And what we could do through this story is we can then travel around the globe. So we go from Denali and we click on Mount Logan, and it's going to zoom us over. Looks like it's working. Oh, excuse me, I should be clicking present. So I'm at file point 1. If I want to go to number 2, Mount Logan. So this is that kind of animation that we're used to seeing again on Google Earth. It's that zooming, that flying, that animation. And I'm going to show you another tool in a few minutes that will let you actually create that and export it as a video file to bring it into the video that you create, and it's free to use. So this is how you can begin telling a story in Google Earth. And so if I were to make these information layers, you can put as much text as you need to really tell the story that you want to tell. So now that we've seen how to build a map, how to export it, and then bring it into Google Earth, I want to show you a couple of examples where news organizations have done that. And some of them are very, very cool. So they are in your cheat sheet. I'm going to bring up one of them that actually is, the origins are in Virginia. So if you're familiar with it, cool. Let's let that load for just a moment. So this is a story called Free Shipping, and it's a story about how an enslaved man shipped himself from slavery into freedom. So out of Virginia into Pennsylvania in 1849. And the story was put together by Encyclopedia Virginia. And so we're in this like present mode, which I was just in on those mountain peaks. And so what we're doing is we're going to walk through the story of his life, which is very geographically told. And so this is a perfect storytelling way to share this kind of information. So we start at the Hermitage in Virginia, which is where Henry Brown was born, and talks a little bit about his family. We've got our sourcing in here. And we then see that he goes to the tobacco factory in Richmond. So that's where he was enslaved and where his work was done. And so what we're doing is we're touring around, we're learning about him. And then after a time, I won't walk through all of this. We see when he marries Nancy, and then we're going to see what happens to the family as they get split up. So each of these story boxes has an image, has some text, and we're learning the story of this man's life. And then at some point, we're going to start to see when he actually shipped himself in a box up to Philadelphia. So really powerfully told, an audacious plan to go north. So you can see some of the stuff told through Google Earth. One thing I do want to share, because I did show you both in Flourish and in Maps how you can get embed code to put in your story. You cannot embed a Google Earth story in a CMS. It's simply just too rich of a file to actually put somewhere else. So you do have to link out to it. So this does need to live within Google Earth. But I think it's rich enough and it's interesting enough that some things are worth doing there as well. So I just want to make sure that that piece of things is clear. So there are a number of stories like this from other organizations that, again, you've got links to if you want to explore them. And I hope you can see sort of how you can build one. You don't have to build your story in Maps first. That's just a way of showing you how they connect. And if you have a data set, bring it into Maps, bring it into Earth from there, et cetera. But you can also just begin building a story within Google Earth. So if I go to the Golden Gate Bridge, it's taking me there. And if I want to bring it into a project, then I can add it to my project right here. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. So there's 2 other Earth tools I want to show you, and I'll show you them pretty quickly. One of them is Earth Studio, which I mentioned is where you can get that. I hope I put this URL in right. It takes so long to load. Yes, I did. I'm going to close a couple of other links so that I don't lose my bandwidth for you all. This is where you could create an animation, this flyover, the orbital, the zoom, export it as a video file and use it in your work. It's free to use. I think there is some crediting required. I don't want to say what it is because I don't know it and I don't want to get it wrong, but just know that when you use an Earth product, there often is some crediting that you might need to do. So just poke around and make sure that you're looking for that. But if I start a new project in Earth Studio and I go to quick starts, we get these 4 types of animations, which we've seen one way or another. We see a lot of this kind of footage like at the beginning of TV shows and movies. I'm going to click on orbit because I really like it. I think it's a nice way of getting a full picture of something. And then I'm going to search for what I'm looking for. So what I want to search for is the Crazy Horse Memorial in South Dakota. And this is going to take us there. And what we're doing is we're zooming around it to show the full radius of it. The thing that I noticed though, when I first go here is that I'm not really seeing the face, which is what I want to see first. So this is where I can make some changes. I can change the radius and come in a little closer. I'm going to get in closer on the altitude. And then I'm going to change the start heading to a different point in the animation so that you can really get a sense of what you're looking at from the get-go. So you can see here, we're getting in a little bit closer to what this really is. There we go. I can also change it from clockwise to counterclockwise. And I can let this play. When I'm happy with how it looks, I can step forward to the next slide. I can speed it up if I want, or I can slow it down. I think 50 is pretty good. And when I click the check mark, I then am in my video file. You can continue to make changes here, or if I'm happy with how it looks, I can click to render it. And what it's going to do is it's going to render it to the cloud. I give it a name. I export it as a video, and then I'll get an email when it's ready. And so this is available if you sign up for an Earth Studio account. Sometimes it does take a few days for that to go through. Then everybody that has Earth Studio has access to do this. If this is something you've done before, you probably exported it as an image sequence, meaning you got a bunch of JPEGs and then you had to animate those into a video. No longer is that the case. You can now just do it as a video file, which is pretty cool. So I hope you can see how powerful this can be and think of some ways that it might be useful for you and for your work. So I want to make sure that you have access to that tool. The last thing I'll show you in the few minutes we have left is called time lapse. And it's the newest feature in Google Earth. And what it does is it shows the progression within a place over time. So the thing that I'll show you and that comes to mind right away when I do show it is climate change. So the tool was built to show how our planet has changed over 40 years. And so the first thing that I want to do is just go to a location. And where I want to go is to the Columbia Glacier in Alaska. So I'm clicking on that. It's going to zoom us over there. And then what it's going to do is it's going to show us 40 years of images, one image from each year that shows the changes at this glacier in Alaska over time. So let's let it render. I know it's a very heavy program, so I apologize for this. But we can really start to see that glacier melt, which is striking. It can also be a bit depressing, but I think it's also really important, right? So I really like time lapse for that reason, for sort of showing how something has changed over time, for bringing something home to your audience to sort of share it. And I think the way to use this sort of as a reporter right now is to just explore. So look around your town, look around some places around the globe, see what you can notice. When you go into it as well, you can also click on stories and featured locations. So these are stories just like the one about the enslaved man that we could see, where we go from point to point. This one's called Warming Planet. And we can just move through the different points to sort of show this change. And we get a lot of, again, that rich text here. So the same exact storytelling format that we just looked at, just now with time lapse. The final resource to share with you on this is if you wanted a video of that. Sorry, it's hard to type and talk at the same time. If you want a video of a time lapse, you cannot export it from any point on the globe, but we do have about 800 videos that are already created for you to use. You can simply download them. So I'm going to go into North America, and here we have, let's see if we've got any in Virginia. We do. So here's Norfolk and Whitesville, West Virginia. So if you were to click on this video to see the changes in Norfolk over 40 years, You can download that. I'm going to click on the button so you can see what your options are. You can get an MP4 file, you can get it in 3D or 2D with labels. Here's some of the licensing information. Please provide attribution, etc. But this video is created for you to already use, so you can work it into any video that you might share. Okay, another jam-packed day of information. We're at time. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm going to slide to the end of the presentation so you can just see what's coming up. So we'll be back together. I hope you'll rejoin me in 2 weeks for a training on innovation. We'll talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and web stories. And I'd love to see you then. I'd love any questions or use cases as you played with these tools over the last 2 weeks. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me in between sessions, and certainly bring them at the beginning of the next one. So thank you all for being here today. I appreciate your time and attention. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Wow, Mary, the presentation has been fascinating. It's been full of great information. I can't wait to see the members use what they've learned today in their own newspapers and on their websites. Before we go, I wanted to let everybody know that I'll send a link out to you to register for the class in 2 weeks. And I will also send you a link to the video. Thanks to everybody who participated today. And thanks again, Mary, for doing this for us. It's been really eye-opening.
Great. Thank you all. I'll see you soon.
Have a great day.
Bye now.